Okay, cool. So I believe that we are live. I'm going to give everyone just a minute to settle in. If you're here and you're ready to get going, you can start by leaving a comment and telling us a little bit about yourself and what you're hoping to learn from this webinar. So I'm going to give everyone just a second to start viewing. Okay, sweet. Cool. So thank you so much for joining our webinar this afternoon and morning for our West Coasters. My name is Liz Eggleston, and I run Course Report, which is a resource for students who are researching coding boot camps. So if you haven't used Course Report, this is my one pitch for the day. Check it out. We have thousands of reviews. We have tons of interviews with alumni and instructors and founders at boot camps across the world. And we do a lot of webinars at Course Report on everything from like choosing your first programming language to what it's like to learn at specific coding boot camps. But every once in a while, I get to invite a few really influential folks in the boot camp world to discuss a topic that's important to this industry as a whole. And so that is what we're doing today, and I'm so excited. So as coding boot camps have grown and evolved over the last 2 or 3 years, we've started to get a lot more questions like these. So, like, what is the value of a CS degree if I can just go to a boot camp? And, you know, we see all the time, like, are boot camps the new college replacement? And alternatively, on the other hand, you know, what am I not learning at a coding boot camp that I would get from a computer science degree? So we're hearing questions like that all the time, and we figured it was time to talk about it. So today we are not going to present slides, nothing formal. We are just going to talk with our amazing panel about this topic, which is the value of coding boot camps versus a computer science degree. So you have probably noticed all of these guys below me. Maybe you even recognize some of them. They are kind of famous in the coding bootcamp world. So I'm going to introduce everyone, and maybe we should just go like left to right. So let's go. So we've got Shaun Johnson, who is the CEO and co-founder of Startup Institute, which is all over the US. We've got Ruan Pethiagoda, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of Reactor Core, which operates Hack Reactor and a number of other schools around the United States. We've got Joe Burgess, who's the head of education at Flatiron School in New York. And online, actually, they've got a new Learn Verified program, which we have an exclusive scholarship for right now. So. And then we've got Jeff Casimir, who's the CEO of Turing School in Denver. He was at Galvanize before that, and Hungry Academy before that, kind of an OG. And then we've got David Yang, who is the co-founder of Fullstack Academy in New York. And Dave Paola, who is the CTO of Block, which is a huge online coding bootcamp. So this is an amazing panel. Now you know all of them. And the last bit of housekeeping is to make sure that you can participate in today's webinar. So please, please speak up, ask questions, contribute using, you can use the Q&A app that's in Google Hangouts, or you can leave a comment on the event page, or you can tweet at Course Report. The spelling is like right below here. You can see Course Report. Cool. All right, so let's get started. I've got some questions, and I know that our audience will have questions too. So I want to get started by, like, can people give sort of a little bit of their background? Like, who here has a computer science degree and like took the traditional route from CS undergrad to senior, you know, web developer? Yeah, everyone? Almost? Okay, wait, okay, so,
Got the odd one out.
yeah, cool. Dave, tell us about your background, like when did you do your CS degree?
Sure, I started my computer science degree at the University of Illinois, let's see, in 2006, and I actually spent 5 years instead of 4 years at the university, and throughout that time formed quite a bit of an opinion, as you might imagine, on higher education in general, and that's course influenced a lot of my subsequent career. But I graduated in 2010 and spent some time in the industry at a couple companies before starting Block in 2012.
Does everyone have a similar story? You can unmute yourself and talk.
My story is particularly similar because I also did electrical engineering and computer science at University of Illinois.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, great to meet you, another. After that, worked in Silicon Valley, worked at Yahoo, did some startups, and I form a similar opinion that of Dave. I guess we'll find out is that CS degrees are great, learned a ton of stuff, but it's just not exactly matched up to what the industry needs right now, as well as I think what some of us are doing.
Yeah, what has sort of changed since y'all got your computer science degrees, as far as like the computer science like degree path goes? Like, is it the same as, do you think, when you were in your CS program?
Are you asking about specifically the computer science degree? What's changed, or in
yeah. Like, is it the same as when you went through it?
I think that's one of the, personally my opinion is that I think that's one of the drawbacks actually of most higher education institutions, is that they tend to be quite slow moving, and the biggest way we've seen this come to fruition is when we speak with employers. They tell us as much. For example, a lot of universities focus on data structures. There's a lot of theory, but there's also a lot of math and science and free electives and all that stuff that isn't really all that relevant, which is why I think you've seen this proliferation of boot camps in the past couple of years.
Cool.
Yeah, I know for me, I went into school to do computer science, but eventually actually changed my major because it turned into this like math degree, and I got into programming because I wanted to build stuff. And as soon as the math stopped being interesting in building stuff, I kind of got disinterested in it. And I think one nice part of kind of this industry it's sprouted up is that actually some universities are doing a lot to change, but yeah, it's so slow in a more traditional education institution when they have 4 years and professors are doing research, and really, most professors are rewarded for research, not for educational innovation and progress.
What? Sorry, we're losing a couple people, but they'll come back in. Let's sort of back up a tiny bit. So, like, I have an English degree. I'm hearing a lot of, like, when we talk about what a CS degree actually entails, I'm hearing a lot of math. Do you learn any like languages, programming languages during that time?
Yeah, I would, one thing I would weigh into is that you can't really sign up for just a CS degree at all, right? Like, you have to sign up for college, and in the process of doing college, get your CS degree. And I think Dave mentioned that perfectly, right? It's like, if you are not interested in a geology class to fulfill basic requirements. I think that's one thing that's a huge difference, is that if you could buy a CS degree in like 2 years, that would be something that'd be interesting, I think. But that's just not possible right now, or it's very difficult to do that. And so I think, to follow up on your question, Liz, is that, you do learn some practical stuff almost kind of, through the process of getting your CS degree, but it's someone who's done some adjunct university within the last 2 or 3 years, it's almost like the students who learn it, they do learn it, but it's because they're doing it on their own, not because it's part of their curriculum. For example, GitHub, right? If you graduate a CS program without a GitHub account, that to me is like travesty. And I sometimes talk to students.
Yeah. So, like, how? Oh, dang. Hopefully people are able to join back. I'm just going to send them a quick email to make sure that they can hop back in, but they should be able to at the same link. So then how do computer science graduates like become, functional, like, everyday developers? I hear that they're like teaching themselves, but are they, doing like internships with their like professors, or how are they going from like graduate to their first job as a developer?
It seems like these days a lot of the students, they're doing it a lot on their own, but building projects. And in a 4-year degree, the goal of the university is to give you all of the different things that you could possibly do as a programmer. So they give you operating systems, they give you compilers, they give you distributed systems, all this crazy stuff that, like, you may or may not use. So I think what happens is that over the 4 years, students, I know I did this at Carnegie Mellon, I like kind of found things that interested me and then had to find internships that got me where I wanted to go, and a ton of work outside of class. And yeah, I mean, it really requires you to be, I think, a self-starter and being able to just augment what the university gives you with what you actually want.
Do y'all get a lot of students at your boot camps who actually went through CS degrees?
Absolutely.
You do?
Yeah, you'll find that, I think, just adding on to that point, that you'll get to learn operating systems and all these things that unfortunately it ends up being like too much or just disjointed, and you're like, okay, so now I spent the semester learning this, but how does this fit into that, and can they both work together? And you never actually get to see the full system. So I think hackathons are also a great place where folks can hang out at, and also just walking down the business school side of your campus, snatched up by some guy that's like, hey, can you code? And then just hacking things together. But shy of that, there really isn't that many opportunities to understand how the big picture fits together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually really good advice. Walk down the business side, business school side of the campus.
One thing I've always found interesting about the university system in whole is that in one day you go, a distributed systems class, an English class, a bio class, and a compiler design class. And like those are 4 completely different contexts. And then you go home and you like do your compiler homework and you kind of get bored of it, so you switch to bio for a bit. And I think humans are amazing animals at focusing. Like we're just amazing at it. And one thing that universities really don't kind of set you up for is focus. They really focus so much on just like exposing you to a bunch of disjointed things, as Shaun said, that it can be really hard to just sit and really learn one thing super, super, super well.
Yeah.
That's why it's kind of been crazy to me.
So
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say that of course, we've all, seems like most of us have gone to computer science programs ourselves, and I certainly do remember all those classes on compilers and databases and operating systems, right? Your own virtual memory mapper. And what was interesting to me is that it took a long time, years actually, before you even got to building anything real as a student in a computer science program. And I think that kind of became obvious that when we went out and talked to employers and engineering managers at like top companies, right? They all told us that they only use, if they have a computer science degree, they only really use anywhere from 10 to 30% of what they learned in their computer science degree, right? And these are not like podunk companies, right? These are companies like Google, Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, Heroku. And I think that largely has led to the industry we now find ourselves in, the bootcamp industry.
Being said, is there room for that computer science theory, some of it or all of it, or just like parts of it in boot camps? Like, what have you found? We see a lot of talk like in the media about boot camps not covering enough computer science fundamentals. Reddit is like notoriously anti-boot camp, I've noticed. But like, is that wrong, or does it not even matter? Like, should we be incorporating some of that theory in?
So there is, but I don't actually see those as mutually exclusive. So if you think about the complexity of an algorithm, or you think about how you're going to build on existing architecture, all of those things you can continue to think about inside a bootcamp. There's really no reason why it has to be, oh, well, I'm just hacking on real things, therefore I have no thought towards how it scales.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm hearing like we're talking. Oh yeah, go ahead, David.
I'd love to add on to that point that Shaun made, is that it'd be terrible for us to say like this is one thing and then bootcamps are another thing. One thing that we're trying at Fullstack, and we're just really amazed at how well it's going, is incorporating some of the really insightful like eureka moments that you get in a CS degree. Like I think Dave mentioned, when you first study compilers, right? Before you get to that class, you never think that there's this way of how does the computer actually understand the programming language itself. And you study this class, and it like the simplicity of the theory, but like the how it all fits together, really I think switches a moment in your mind. And so we're incorporating those kind of key lessons. And I think that that's really interesting for both from a software engineering aspect of understanding how all the tools you use work, as well as from a theoretical aspect of, okay, now when I see this, nothing strikes me as magic anymore, right? It's just more science, more things I've we'll see.
Yeah,
Mature, they'll incorporate more CS theory, the real critical.
Okay, so I'm here. So it seems like, you know, we're talking about sort of these things as separate, you know, education paths, and then there's some room for overlap. But I'm kind of curious, like, to explore like the moment that boot camps sort of came into the scene. Like, tell me, like, Jeff, why did you first start thinking about the immersive sort of boot camp model as like a viable option? Like, sort of go back to that moment, I guess, in all of your heads, because you all went through that sort of journey.
Yeah. Back at that time, you know, it feels like it was a long time ago. It was actually 2012. The question was, like, if we had like high aptitude people who had no technology background, how long would it take to turn them into proficient developers, like job-ready developers? And my answer was 6 months. Other people have other answers, you know, to this day. But what's really interesting to me, looking back at my computer science education versus what we teach now, there is a little bit of overlap. But when I look at college or like higher ed as an institution, the challenge that higher ed has always had, and I think is really struggling with right now, is how do you balance the kind of intellectual like curiosity and investigation with this need for like job prep. And I think computer science programs in particular, like that nuance really kind of rears its ugly head, because you have professors and so forth that reasonably want to teach about compilers, want to teach about operating systems and all these things, and like the theoretical learnings there are so interesting, and I'm glad that I got to do some of those. However, in job preparedness, those things are not helpful. And so what we really tried to target was, how do we focus on like just job prep, and then along the way kind of fill in, like sneak in a little bit of the computer science and the investigation.
Yeah, and
I wanted to ask you a question, and maybe I'm taking Liz's role. All right, so dude, like, I think even like how long her intro of you, there's some more, right? Like, so there's the stuff that you're doing now at Turing. There was G School. There was Hungry Academy, but there was also like Jumpstart Lab, right? So you think about all those things, and sure, there's probably some arc of like, this is what I firmly believe. What has changed? Is there anything different from all of those iterations?
You know, it hurt my feelings a little bit, where I don't know if y'all have to do this, but I have to make resumes pretty frequently for like compliance things and government stuff and so forth. And somebody was reading my resume and they were like, "Oh, it seems like you've done 6 things in the last 6 years." And I was like, "How dare you?" You know, and I was fortunate about 3 weeks ago to be at the Teach for America 25th Anniversary Summit, and to kind of like get back to my roots there. Really, when I look back at from 2003 till now, the essential question trying to attack was like, I believe there's like unlocked human potential, and technology and programming is a great way to do that. How do we like broaden the base of people that have access to these careers, to using this technology, to building tools for people like them to do amazing things, you know? So that started with high school, teaching high school, running a middle school, and then did the Jumpstart Lab thing. You know, when I look back, Jumpstart Lab was at once both the most like profitable and the least fulfilling. Like going out, and I don't know if any of y'all have done this like corporate training gig, but people are just not interested, and they're just kind of like passing the time, getting through the day. And to be honest, I think that's when I look back at my CS classes, that's how a lot of my classmates were like, I'm here to get this degree, and then I'll go work at Boeing, and I'll go work at Microsoft, and I'll go work at Intel, and then I'll just like get my sweet paycheck, have my good benefits, and go home. you know. And so after 2-3 years of being back in that environment, paid off all my college debt and so forth, and it's like, I got to get out of here, and then got back to like the people that I care about, that I know y'all care about too, and enjoy so much working with, people who are trying to make a career change, who are trying to really like vault their life and their path into a whole new thing. So yeah, I've learned a lot of lessons along the way, I guess. Started a lot of things, but this is the one. With setting up Turing, the goal was let's make a thing that lasts 100 years. So, and I say that to people, and they're usually like, ha ha ha, and it's like that was the plan. So, here we are.
Yeah, to build on the kind of people that Jeff's talking about, it's whenever you look back at life-changing experiences, I feel like no one remembers like an amazing textbook or how good the kayak was on their kayaking trip. They remember the people they did it with. They remember like this amazing set of people they did it with. And I think one thing that a lot of us have done a good job at, and I'm always super excited about at the Flatiron School, is the set of people you're learning with. It's because they're not just looking for a degree. They're not just looking to check a box, right? They love this. They want to get like way better than they were before, and hopefully get paid to do it, get paid to do something they love. And that's really, I think, that's my favorite part of this is watching not even the learning that happens from our instructors to our students, but really what happens within the students and within the group work and the pairing and the like kind of the love that everyone has for what we're doing and then for everyone around them. I think.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, I'm not going to say I disagree with anything, because we just had some great stories, and I think we each have our own motivations for being in our industry. I certainly have my own opinions about higher education, and I could probably rant for hours, as we all could, about the problems with that system in society today. But one thing that I kind of differ on, actually, is if I think about the best engineers that I know, we did this. We went out and we asked these engineers at these top companies, and we said, how did you learn? Where did you learn these skills? The skills that you remember, those experiences you remember. I'm not talking about bootcamp grads. I'm talking about, frankly, computer science graduates, right? The good ones, the ones who get jobs at Google. And we spoke with them, and we asked them, how did you learn? And usually what they respond with is that, first of all, they didn't learn in a classroom. They learned in a classroom, but they didn't learn their real skills in a classroom. They learned by working on projects with other people, and especially with other experienced people who are more experienced than they were. And so that's actually influenced a lot of what we do at Block. As an example, we have a bit of a unique model. We don't really consider ourselves a boot camp as much. We're trying to actually find that middle ground between that computer science degree and that boot camp. And so our model is a little unique in that if you enter Block, you will be paired with an experienced practitioner, someone who has a job. We call them mentors, right? It's a one-on-one mentorship system. We chose the word mentor very specifically because we didn't want to think of these people just as instructors or as TAs or professors or tutors or anything like that. It's much more like mentorship. It's much more, let's sit together and work together and not just understand the best practices and all the debugging techniques and the keyboard shortcuts and how to use your tools and all that great stuff, but also how do you solve problems, how do you handle frustration, you know, those much higher level things, which can be tough to craft a curriculum in a classroom setting with other students that teaches that in the best possible way, right? And so that's actually a downside we see of the classroom, and that's why we're online, 100% online, is because we believe the classroom is not the best way.
Let me ask a question of all of y'all, because I'm hearing, like, of course, you need to be learning from people who are more experienced than you, but when you do your, hiring searches for your instructors or your mentors or whatever you call your support staff at your boot camp. And we just got this question from an audience member who says, I'm curious, I'm finding that more boot camps are using former students for instructors and TAs. Are the majority of your boot camps using former students as instructors? And do you think that that is a good or a bad thing, I guess? Do you require that your instructors have CS degrees?
It's an amazing thing. I think speaking for Hack Reactor, Maker Square, Telegraph Academy, and our online program, Remote Beta, we are heavily into former students being instructors in various capacities. They've risen in the ranks. We've got a kind of a graduate program called Hacker in Residence, which runs them through the ropes for 3 months, and we tend to pick and choose the folks who think would be the most ideal from an engineering and pedagogical standpoint to stay on. I'd say the majority of our technical instruction staff at this point across the schools were at one point students. And actually the technical instruction staff forms the minority of the instructional staff. Most of the instructors have a non-technical, pedagogical, perhaps psychology, therapy, education style background. And I think that speaks to what everyone else is saying about the focus on the environment, the community, and just using the combination of curriculum and like the non-technical skills of group dynamics to focus everyone's learning. That's, I think, how we all see the best results.
Do you require, Ruan, that students who graduate and then come back to work for Hack Reactor or any of the Reactor core schools do like real world experience?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We used to, and we used to be a lot more focused on that kind of experience. But over time, we found that the challenge of finding really good instructors, really good lecturers, is twofold. One, you've got to make sure that they have the right technical expertise and they're really good programmers. What is much more difficult is to make sure that you find really good, empathetic, and powerful educators. And so we found it much easier to find really good educators and teach them engineering than we have found it to find really good engineers and teach them to educate. One just allows us to take advantage of the thing we're already extremely good at and let folks come in as really good teachers. One day when we have the boot camp for teachers, that might change. We might start hiring a lot of engineers and turning them into teachers.
Interesting.
I want to jump in because I think the person that asked the question is probably asking a more specific question than what we all decide to do with our boot camps. So there's really three things that, original poster you should be looking at, right? Like one, is this person technical enough that they can give me the skills that I'm looking for? Two, is this person a good enough instructor that they can guide me down the path versus just saying, just be like me? And three, like, is that person that graduated from that boot camp teaching because they can't get a job, right? And I think that there's a lot of boot camps that are out there hiring people just to boost their numbers, and it's a shitty service to, sorry, I'm going to curse anyway. So it's not a great service to the former student or your current students. So watch out for those things. I think there's different ways to go about it, but I'd really harp in on those three areas.
I completely agree with you, Shaun.
And say that it's important. We've seen that it's important to continue injecting fresh ideas from industry, because every time someone engineer comes in, they see, every company out there is different too. So it's important to get that fresh, kind of fresh thinking. So we like to have more of a mix of some percentage from that we bring in from students, some percentage that we bring in from students who have had now 2 years of experience, and some percentage of people who are instructors who are just from the industry. I think it's important to keep fresh ideas. I think my parents are both academics. One thing I think that the university system got in trouble with is that they became too self-referential, right? If you only bring in your own people, you don't get fresh outside ideas. I want to go back to a different idea that I've been seeing in the questions, is that, and it's fun for me to be on a call with Jeff, because Jeff reminds me of that scene in Lord of the Rings where Elrond is like, I was there 3,000 years ago when this all started, because I do have to praise him as what I consider one of the people who really pioneered this space. And he mentioned something that was about paying off a student debt, right? I think that's something that everyone's talking about right now, right? School is also really expensive. And one thing this conversation I think really needs to incorporate is it's really hard for us to say in general, do this or that, because it's a lot on who you are. If you're 18, I'm not one of those people who are like, don't go to college, drop out, start a company. I think that's a very privileged thing to say. I think college is still a very good choice. It's expensive, but it's also really, really fun. And I met my co-founder, Nimit, on the first day of school 16 years ago. So you meet some of your lifelong friends. So if you're 18 and you love computers, my recommendation is do a coding school, a boot camp, the summer before you go to your freshman year. Then the 4 years you're at coding school, you're in CS, you'll get so much more out of everything you do. Now, if you're 25 and you're considering switching careers, like going back for a 2-year, 4-year CS degree, I think is financial suicide, right? I mean, that's 4 years you'll be in debt a few $100,000. I just think it's not the right move. So it really depends a little bit on who you are as well. And I think that's why when someone emails us saying, should I do this for our CS degree? I'm like, I need to know more about who you are, not what we provide.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things, I completely agree with what Shaun mentioned. I personally, and everyone I know at my company, approaches the question of the former students, the alumni coming back as instructors, frankly and candidly with deep skepticism, right? It's actually a core part of our DNA that the most important thing about whatever program you choose is who you're learning from. Who is this person? What are their experiences? Do they have experience? Right? That's one of the drawbacks of the higher education system today, is that you have professional teachers who've been out of the industry for too long, right? And so in the same way, anyway, so we maintain a healthy skepticism of that model. And so in contrast, we're highly selective with our mentors. I think one of the most selective programs out there. Again, I forget who said it, but the idea of emotional intelligence, educational skills as well as technical skills, pairing those, I can certainly understand why and how it'd be so difficult to find people like that, and I agree, it is difficult. But what I love about Block is that we have over 100 mentors in our community. They work at companies like Apple, Google, Uber. Right? These are engineers who have jobs, and they have had jobs for years. And so they've worked at Fortune 500 companies, and now I'm kind of rambling a little bit, and I can't remember exactly the question. But,
no, this is all wonderful, and I want to switch gears a tiny bit and talk a little bit about. Oh yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to come back a little bit to your question about CS degrees on the staff, Liz. I'm actually very proud that a significant chunk of our staff doesn't have college degrees, much less CS degrees, and that they're just contribute just as much as everybody else. You know, when I used to be in charge of hiring K-12 teachers, and what we used to say is that teaching is 85% teaching and 15% content. And so if you give me someone who's ready to do the work, who has those empathetic understandings and has a certain amount of pedagogy, is coachable, etc., adding the technical piece on there is pretty easy. And also, it's kind of what we're supposed to be doing here, what we're supposedly good at. So, as we build out the staff, I think it's something like 2/3 of our instructional staff were my students at some point. I have mixed feelings about that. There is, as kind of came up, the threat of the echo chamber, right? And so I think you have to be conscious and fight that and bring in those kind of new voices into the mix along the way. But it is also so hard as we cultivate these students. We do so much work to select the right people. We train them up, and really we just love them so much. And then it's how do we let them go? They're so fantastic. How do we let them go? And so I think Shaun's question about are people padding the job stats with hiring students? I think that's probably somewhere in the mix. But for us, I have to say that when we hire students, it's the top performing students, the ones that could have had 5 or 10 job offers. My favorite model though is for them. I hesitate to hire people right out of the program because I feel like we're robbing them of this opportunity that they signed up for, right? That they deserve the chance to get out into the technical workforce and see how no one knows how to agile and all these things that go wrong in the real workspace. And then my favorite model is to let them out there for 2 or 3 years and then slowly claw them back. And there's kind of a joke on the staff of don't go to lunch with Jeff, because if you have a job and then we go to lunch, you're going to have a new job working here.
Yeah, no, I think that honestly the approach to hiring instructors is all over the spectrum for all schools, but it is really good to hear everyone's sort of opinions on that. And I do like hearing. It's really interesting that a chunk of your instructors don't have college degrees at all, much less CS degrees. Do you all find though that most of your students still have bachelor's degrees? I think that's something that we've found in our research before, is that we're still sort of at this point where yes, there are these cool stories of students who go to a boot camp before they go to college, or drop out of college and go to a boot camp. But for the most part, we're still seeing these career changers who are still getting the benefits of that bachelor's degree, and then the boot camp.
We find that a lot of our students have bachelor's degrees. I don't know the exact numbers. There's always 1 or 2 or maybe 3 in each cohort that doesn't.
Do you think we'll shift away from that? Like,
I don't know. So we've been doing this program with the New York City government to give free. New York State provides tuition for students who are making less than 50,000. We did it last about 6 months, and the other requirements, they didn't have a college degree. So we taught 32 students, lived in New York City, didn't have college degrees, and helped get them jobs at the end. And it worked. And I mean, I think for a lot of people, like, you gain more than just some skills at university. Like the liberal arts education idea, I love education. I love that idea. You gain knowledge, and so it's great to have an education. It's great to have a college. It is not a detriment.
Well, and the students who did the NYC fellowship at Flatiron, actually, didn't they outperform almost?
Yeah, their average salary was like 1,000 or 2,000 more than the non-fellowship students.
Yeah, but then I've also heard Adam talk about this. From Flatiron talk about like that there are specific challenges that come with.
Yes, there are specific challenges, and I think a lot of it really comes from just there's a lot of shared experience, and when you're hiring, when a lot of hiring practices really kind of bias towards people that are like them. And when you have these students who don't have a college degree, didn't grow up middle class and that stuff, there's just a lot of cultural differences.
Yeah.
And so it was great. I mean, we worked with a ton of companies that really hired people that weren't like them. And I know that can be hard when you're doing hiring.
It takes work on the side of the employer.
Exactly. Well, we work with employers to like kind of set them up for success and set them up to be able to hire these amazing people that just don't look like anyone else that works at Kickstarter or at whatever company it was.
Yeah.
We've seen the same thing in San Francisco. I mean, Liz, you pointed out, I think Adam mentioned the folks who did the NY Fellowship have done a little better than people who are much older and with more education. So we don't have a government-supported program in California, but among the 1,000 or so Hack Reactor alumni, the younger ones without college degrees form some of the most famous, so the ones who contribute on, say, the Angular core teams, or who've written entire frameworks with and for Mozilla. These are kids who either dropped out of college or who enrolled in college, did this in the summer like we thought as a stepping stone, and then decided, okay, do I pay $100,000 a year in tuition or take this $100,000 job? And the number of those students we see has not increased over time as our classes have grown and our popularity has grown. We've seen a lot more folks with degrees just because I think they're the ones who are able to get through. But we're actually pursuing more and more research to try and see where we can find more students with a high school background. The EQUIP program that the Department of Education is sponsoring has been a really exciting nexus of this, getting to work with universities and seeing how you can combine the best of CS degrees with the best of what we have to offer. We're gambling that's going to see a lot more people straight out of high school coming in and taking advantage of those same kinds of outlier traits.
Very cool. Okay, and then I think that actually transitions us very well into talking about employment, because we're actually getting a few questions about this. Pablo asks, well, this is pretty blunt, but he says, it seems that employers are rejecting people who have gone through boot camps for different reasons. Can you comment on that? Maybe even more specifically, like, are there still some jobs that require different skills or different education levels? Like, are there still some jobs that are going to require a CS degree that you've seen? Can y'all be like very blunt and honest about that?
Absolutely.
Airbnb, Google, a few companies like that are still, I mean, speaking for the Bay Area, I mean, they still require CS degrees. Jeff, you probably got an idea of what it's like down in Florida as well.
Yeah, we're in Colorado, but we do see that there are, I would say, most companies still expect a computer science degree to get in the door. That's changing over time, right? Because it becomes a competitive advantage when a company is willing to hire a non-traditional applicant, and then they succeed, and then they come back and hire 5 more, and then they come back and hire 15 more. So it's a hard lesson that I think is very like supply and demand driven. The companies like Google and Airbnb and so forth that every CS major is applying to, they don't have any incentive to change those requirements. But little startups, you know, all kinds of, like everyone else basically, other than those kind of top 5, top 10 players, that they're willing to take more risks. You know, I'm curious on the hiring question. You know, if y'all have seen some of the same things we've seen with young people, specifically 18, 19 years old, that have come through the program, have performed excellently. Like honestly, some of the best developers that we've had, and have really struggled in the job hunt, that we've seen what I interpret to be as kind of like an ageism on the end of the spectrum that people don't usually think about, where, and the way I interpret it is, if I'm a company and I'm taking a risk on some developer that doesn't have a degree credential, and I have the choice between a 25-year-old that used to manage a restaurant and an 18-year-old who just left his parents' house, I'm going to choose the 25-year-old with a little bit of workplace experience. Is that similar to what y'all are seeing?
The 18 to 25-year-olds and the 18, 19-year-olds are much more likely to experience ageism or something that feels like it at least once or twice. What you also find when they apply to a high volume of jobs is there's plenty of companies who are hungry to take advantage of what they bring to the table, and just fill in the gap that some of the other more stoic and opinionated companies leave for those folks. So there's a lot of people here who, you know, recall and romanticize the fact that Mark Zuckerberg didn't wrap up his degree, and that there's a lot of people like that. I think in the Bay Area more than elsewhere, we've seen a liberalization away from the requirement for CS degrees. But then on the other extreme, what I tell a lot of those 18, 19-year-olds when they have those bad experiences is you point them to folks like, you know, Max Howell, who wrote Homebrew, which most of Google uses, but he was rejected by them for not being able to invert a binary tree or something. And you've got both sides. And there's plenty of employers who will recognize that. I think many of you guys would have seen this as well. And just target those folks because it's a really great way to get hyper-talented people at a competitive, you know, not too high in the six-figure range salary, and really build out a strong and open-minded culture on their teams.
You know, we've been talking a lot about what universities do very poorly, and there is quite a bit that they do poorly. I think we all agree with that. But it is worth acknowledging that they do a lot of things very well. And one thing we did, I actually love answering this question because we went out and talked to these employers. We talked to I don't want to name all the companies again, but we talked to many companies. We spoke with them, and we actually asked them some pretty blunt questions. We asked them first and foremost, what skills do coding bootcamp grads often lack? And they told us straight up. They told us the first and foremost, theory is important. That's the first one. Bootcamp grads often can build applications. They can build them from scratch, and in some cases collaborate with other students on them. But they don't really, in the experience of these employers, they don't really know how to leverage algorithms, data structures to solve these complex problems efficiently, or to like kind of tackle those gnarly technical problems that come up day to day at those companies. They also told us that they lack experience working on existing code bases. They've built projects again, sometimes new projects, sometimes they've contributed a little bit to some existing stuff, but they really lack experience working on large code bases that have like years of commits behind them, right? With hundreds of people who've come and gone through those companies that have the cobwebs, and navigating existing repositories, of course, as we all know, is a skill in and of itself. I could go on. They don't understand all the time how to go one layer below, so to speak. So understand the depth and breadth of the toolbox. So I know I can't remember which programs here. Some programs have the building Rails, or I think it's called rebuilding Rails. I think that's actually rather rare. What we found from talking to our employers is that their experience has been that the coding bootcamp grads generally aren't able to build their own tools, which is a hallmark skill of a software engineer, right? And then lastly, the collaboration one, have very little experience collaborating with existing engineers, not to mention designers, product managers, perhaps many of the programs here have practice agile, kind of stand-up, how most companies run their engineering processes. And so really what we took away from that, and they kind of told us this, is that I feel like I'm unfairly lumping all boot camps together. I totally realize that not all boot camps are created equal, but frankly, their opinion is that 3 months is not long enough to learn all you need to learn to be a professional software engineer. That's why our program is a year long.
I mean,
Does the rest of the panel get the same kind of feedback from employers? Is that what y'all are hearing as well?
Liz,
well,
I got
one thing that
the original question was. So
Okay, hold on. Shaun, go ahead.
Don't hold back. What's going on with the computer science requirement? Why is it still there? Will it go away? Right. Yeah. So, whether or not you want to talk about how long, the boot camp is, and whether it's a year, 6 months, or 8 months, or whatever, right? Like for people like Startup Institute and, the stuff that Jeff has been doing, right? Like the wave has started pretty much in like 2012. So if we're able to do this in 4 years, where institutions want to say like, hey, well, these guys have been working on systems and legacy code. Like, you guys don't have that yet. Like, we've done this in 4 years and have had way more outcomes happen. So, there's no reason why we can't do that, right? Like, for those of us that have been around for 4 years, hell, maybe that's a great idea. Let's create, existing piece of software that each person that comes into the boot camp has to continue to pick up and work with, as like not from a blank terminal and a blank text editor, right? Like, there's tons of ways that we can continue to improve. But when you ask the question, like, why does the CS requirement still there? It's laziness and it's ego. That's it, right? Like, it's lazy because you can't. You say, all right, well, if I've got a degree and I can go here, like, I can shut out that philosophy major that's like sick with symbolic logic and can be an amazing dev. I can get the same playwright that thinks about software the same way. Like, there's so much opportunity, but let's just be lazy and like, oh, you don't have that thing on your degree? Nah, next, right? It's ego because I'm the hiring manager and I invested 4 years of my life getting one of them. If I don't hire from that pool, like, what the hell did I do with my money in my 4 years? So I have to come back. Like, that's it. That's my only opinion.
Yeah, exactly. No, well, that's some real talk. I mean, I think I also love that you brought it up that, like, these boot camps have, at the very longest, have been open for 4 years, right? So, like, the fact that you can hear from an employer, oh, we're not getting this out of a boot camp grad, okay, maybe that's something we need to add to our curriculum. I think that's really awesome as compared to maybe a CS program that's been hearing forever from employers, oh, they're getting only theory, and, like, it's still the same CS program. I think that's just kind of a unique thing about boot camps, but I won't. That was a little bit too opinionated. So
I think one thing that people should understand too is that it's not. Like Shaun said. Sorry, is it okay if I?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so it's I think Pablo asked this question is like, it seems that employers are rejecting people who have gone through boot camps, and we do hear that a lot in the marketplace, where it's almost like a mental shortcut that companies are saying that, hey, we're not going to hire anyone from a boot camp, because the problem is that none of the people on this panel, but there are some boot camps out there that have probably graduated people that were just not ready to be in the job hunt itself, right? And so the spectrum of space has pretty high. Now that's one thing we focus on a lot, is that we want to make sure that people come out and they can provide value very quickly. And so we have to get over that mental hump of, oh, I talked to this bootcamp grad who, they could do Rails new, but that's it, right? And they could like plug in the things where they need to plug in. But I think that, what people expect culturally is a lot more. And so we place students at, at every company you can imagine, the startups, the Googles of the world, Facebook, Amazon. And so in my mind, there's no more, at the top companies who know the top boot camps, there's no more stigma around, oh, you graduated from Fullstack or Flatiron or Hack Reactor. It's but definitely if you go to one of these like less, I'm just saying less savory schools, a lot of companies are saying we're not going to hire anyone from that school because we just don't know. The quality is just too large. So that's about as blunt as I can put it. Is that if you're not studying course report, you're going to be having a bad time in the job search.
Yeah, I think another thing that whoever asked this question, whenever they start applying to places and they talk to the admissions folk and all of that, is that career services at schools like ours is a good bit different than anything you've ever experienced before. Everyone talked about how we talk to companies to make our curriculum better, and I think all of us do that, and all of us probably do an amazing job at that. One thing that what you kind of forget to ask is the back end, the career services, the what am I going to get, how am I going to get helped to get a job? And like what Shaun was talking about of, yeah, a lot of times it is just being lazy, and if I'm going to spend 4 weeks fixing a bug or fixing our hiring process, I get more immediate gratification of fixing a bug than fixing our hiring process. I think a lot of companies suffer from that. And so one thing that I love our career services department for doing is they both are doing the coaching, and so they're helping you review all of your emails and review resumes and how to talk to employers and how to do well in interviews. But they're also talking to employers about here's who these people are going to be, and here's how they're going to offer something that's transformational to your company in the long term. And I think we do, like, I love what we do here at our online and our in-person offerings, that we're able to do both, right? We're able to both coach our students, but also try and solve the larger systemic issue of only accepting CS grads from top 20 schools that can do merge sort with their eyes closed. We want companies to be able to really, we think that a diverse set of employees is a valuable addition to any company, and getting companies there is a big part of our career services. I think that's something to ask whenever you are applying, is like, how does your career services kind of prepare companies for these non-traditional people? I think a lot of I know it didn't occur to me until I started kind of thinking about what our career services should look like.
I wanted to add one last thing on the requirements piece is, I think if you ask the typical software developer, what skills do you need to do your job, they would have a hard time actually coming up with any meaningful list, like abstract problem solving or whatever. And so I think what you see in larger companies, larger companies, is you have HR, and they have been told that engineering wants X people. And so they ask engineering, hey, engineering, how do we find people like you? And engineering goes like, shit, we don't know. I got a computer science degree, so probably find some of those. And then HR is like, okay, let me go find some people that match the best description that they got out of it. And so that's where I think, for us, the majority of our students go to work at companies led by current or former engineers. And I think that's because they know how to assess and recognize what we call our people, people that are into building things. And for the HR department, it's real hard. And the thing HR is terrified of is wasting engineering's time, right? And gathering up a bunch of people that aren't going to work and being like, here, engineers, figure out if you want any of these 20 people. And then engineering is like, hey, you do your job. I'm not here to be your screener, da-da-da-da-da. And so then HR gets scarred from that and says okay, let's tighten up these requirements. If you don't have that Stanford CS degree, you're not coming through.
Ron, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was going to mention, I agree with everything that Jeff said as well. And while we do have Joe's and Flatiron's Career Services Department in the spotlight, we should highlight that they do something that no CS program can, which is if you pull down their audited job search report, you can see a level of detail about their outcomes that you won't find a top CS program that will tell you whether they're even doing as well on any metric. And I think you'll probably see their top 25% of salaries are higher than the top 25% of many, many CS program salaries. And of course, we've seen similar results, and we're working on the audit. But if you're a high school graduate thinking of the choice between a CS degree or a bootcamp, there's really two audiences whose experiences you want to be taking into account. The first is employers, and you asked, do employers is it hard work to make them agree to hire bootcamps, or are they agreeing not to hire bootcamp graduates? It was hard work to make that change in San Francisco, and I think there's a lot more competency testing going on, that there are some schools that have been blacklisted for the reasons that have been mentioned. But other than that, you see a lot of open-mindedness and a lot of magnetism to some of the top names because they have that experience. But you'll still find jobs at companies that have these bars that your graduates are itching to get into, and they ask, why can't I get this job when I graduated from your bootcamp? I should have done a CS degree instead. But we would just respond, no, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should just take another job right now, earn $100 and something thousand for the next year or two, and then you can get pretty much any job you want. Because the stigma we've seen for fresh bootcamp graduates, anywhere we've seen it, just simply has never applied to the graduates who get out and have 1 or 2 years of experience. And thus, they have income versus tuition, work experience versus whatever the college experience had to offer, which may have been equivalent, better or worse. And then we've never seen folks have any problems. So you've seen some of the hardest jobs for computer science graduates to get, going to some of our graduates without a CS degree, in some cases any degree, and just 1 or 2 years of experience. So it's been a little personal and sentimental for me. I took Hack Reactor almost 3 years ago. My class of 20 is having their 3-year anniversary in a month. And you can see the kinds of jobs that those folks have gotten into now. It's been just a couple of years, and these are not the kind of jobs that you could get. It would take you a CS degree and 2 years of experience, and you can get it with a bootcamp experience plus 2 or 3 years of work. And what that tells you is, once you control for real-life work experience of the kind that all of us try to emulate, you see that degree come into less and less relevance. And that's something that a lot of the top programs are thinking of themselves. How can they compress the learning that they do and do it faster and better, so that it's more price competitive for the folks who want to shy away from the, what I would agree is a pretty valuable background, the liberal arts kind of classes.
I wanted to wrap back to something Shaun said, I believe, about like what we've done so far in 4 years. And one of the things I worry about when we look at this hiring piece is that I think we're recreating, somewhat through like indifference and inattention, recreating a lot of the system that we like sought out to break or disrupt or whatever, right? Where in undergrad, how many colleges are there in the United States? I don't know. It seems like every corner I turn, there's another like Southwestern Denver University or something that I've never heard of. And so if you're a hiring manager and you're hiring for a business analyst, right, you're looking for MIT and Stanford and so on and so forth. And if you don't have one of those names, well, like I'm probably not even going to read your resume, right? And so now as an industry, because like we haven't really figured out how to do competency-based hiring, competency-based like evaluation and so forth, I think we're starting to see that again, right? Where it's like, oh, you came from this program, this one, cool, let's interview you. You came from some other program in that was, close to where you live or something, like, I'm not interested. And that's real, it's dangerous and disappointing.
So Jeff,
I think that's disappointing also, yeah.
An interesting solution to that too, right? Like, so, Flatirons published a lot of their audited results. Startup Institutes publish our audited outcomes. It looks like Hack Reactor's on the verge. If you guys haven't already, do it. And for all of the Me Too's that continue to pop up behind us, maybe they should actually shut their doors if they're not helping people towards a certain threshold. And then it won't need to be about prestige or legacy. It can just be about where can I go that's affordable, accessible, where I vibe with the people, and it's proven that I can change my career for the better with them.
We're about to release a new feature on Course Report where you can like very clearly show all of your outcomes as well. So
that's going to be tons of fun.
Won't it be?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm going to put all the numbers.
Yay! I know. I'm actually really excited about it. I think it'll be cool. And then at some point, yeah, it'll be wonderful. So
beta customers, sign us up.
All right, cool. Y'all, so I want to make sure that we get to a few questions before we wrap up, because I know that y'all have busy lives and you need to run your boot camp. So I'm getting a couple questions about, Chandra asked what type of programs are there that are helping assist women get into boot camps and learn to code. And I want to go even like maybe a little bit deeper into that, which is that like boot camps are proving that they're actually enrolling way higher percentages of women and people of color, underrepresented minorities than traditional CS programs. And we see that, but why do you think that that is happening? Like, what's the trend there? Are y'all doing some magic?
So interestingly, the women and minorities we see coming into the program are almost never the straight out of high school types. They're folks who've got some kind of work experience. There's been folks who've been in design, law degrees, cheesemongers, working in retail, and that kind of thing. So I think they, by and large, have had time to get over the kinds of stigmas that happen at the end of high school when you're choosing whether you're going to do what the boys do or what the girls do. and they've had time to see more of the real world and what actually goes on in industry and what people are really good at doing. And I think you guys would have seen the same, I'm sure, I know the folks from Flatiron have, that women can do as well, if not better than men in many cases, even controlling for education experience and any of that stuff. And at least in the Bay Area as well, you have a lot of companies that are very mission focused towards trying to promote diversity in their teams. You've got people funding scholarships and that kind of thing to help. And those kinds of arrangements are much easier for companies to drive and see results from with a bootcamp and with a 4-year program. So when Capital One wanted to promote getting more women on their team, and they thought about it in December, cutting a deal with us last month means they're going to start seeing more women 3 months from now on their team. If they cut a deal with Stanford, it's going to start affecting them in several years down the line, and potentially they would see less impact. And because we move much faster, I think we're able to just make that difference with the kinds of people who are most open to the kinds of risk and change. Again, I expect the EQUIP program and things that come out of it to change that as it becomes safer for folks in colleges to take more of these kinds of risks.
Along those lines, is anybody participating in the EQUIP program? Does someone want to explain what the EQUIP program is? I can, but it's probably cooler coming from y'all.
I can be quick about it. So,
okay.
EQUIP, in the change of office, we've got now a new Secretary of Education, and it's been long that we've been looking at coding boot camps, MOOCs, and other alternative forms of education from like an ivory tower. And they've been getting great results and allowing for more educational outcomes to happen than institutional higher ed has. So with the new year, there's actually a pilot out with EQUIP, which is educational quality for improving
innovative partnerships.
Innovative partnerships, there you go. So, all right, I'll take it again. Educational quality through innovative partnerships.
Yep.
Yeah, so anyway, what it is if you're one of those, you can partner with an institutional higher ed partner and start to deliver those outcomes through the same channels that your mom and dad tells you that you need to go and get a 4-year degree, and then you're like, wow, now I have debt and all this, like no career, no job. Now you can use the things that we're providing individuals in a more integrated fashion.
So like we just spent the last hour talking about why traditional education is sort of failing in some way. So why partner with these traditional institutions? Like what can boot camps get out of that relationship?
Well, I think it's exactly that last piece, right? Like, so you're integrating into the status quo in order to disrupt it, right? So whether or not like these 100-year-old institutions are going to die, I think that's a little bit more doomsday and far out thinking. But I think the best way that innovation can happen is when you think about it more collaboratively rather than in a more aggressive way. So I think it's a good thing, and for those that can start to show what 4-year education can be doing to make itself better, I think it's a good thing.
What's the next?
I'd like to say, that if we're talking about, so there's lots of ways you can think about the overlap, right, between higher education and colleges and universities and boot camps. And so if we're talking about partnering, I think we will see this overlap increase actually over time. But personally, I'm actually kind of wary of it. Most of the time, maybe I shouldn't say most of the time, but often, universities partnering with any particular boot camps is kind of a twofold prong. Kind of, first of all, there's a lot you can get if you become accredited, right? Access to student loans, that kind of thing.
The .edu domain.
I'm sorry?
The .edu domain.
Right, yeah. Not to mention the massive bureaucratic red tape that is required to become accredited and all of that, right? And so partnering with a university allows particular boot camps to kind of hack the accreditation process, so to speak, right? But the other thing is financing. Financing is really, really important. We've actually avoided that at Block, and I don't think we're unique in this way, actually. I think many other programs as well have done this. Kind of avoided the need to partner with higher education institutions because this is a good thing, is that there are many, many financing options available that are not the same as student loans, and they have similar terms, right? So I think that's great, and we find from our employer conversations and the success of our graduates is that, again, another good thing about the entire industry, the outcome it's having across the world is that most of these companies don't care about the degree, right? They don't, which is great. and so I personally am very wary of boot camps partnering with higher education institutions.
What about boot camp? What about universities that are creating their own coding boot camps?
I think the rising tide lifts all boats.
So
I think that's interesting. I would watch how many administrators you let involved.
I wouldn't advise. I agree.
Sorry,
yeah.
guys. There's a couple of things about the EQUIP program that are a little that might be easy to miss. And the first one is that it's not necessarily to produce degrees. The universities and schools can come up with certification programs or something that is less than a degree instead, and that's something the department's super open to. And the second thing is something that we've become more and more grateful for over the last 8 months, which is the focus on serving low-income students. That's really what the program is all about, because the thing about this industry as it is right now, and we've seen, and any of you guys who've tried to finance low-income folks yourselves have seen, is it's extremely hard for folks who don't typically have access to capital to afford these programs. Probably many of you have seen your alumni loaning money to your students to help them take these kinds of programs. And we tried, and we're still trying. We opened a school, Telegraph Academy, in the East Bay in last June to focus on low-income students using a lot of these private lending services. But because of things like credit ratings, it's really difficult for folks who are low-income to get approved. And so I think this is the opportunity to take the kind of verified, auditable outcomes metrics that Shaun, Flatiron, and several other schools are ahead of, and we're all working on and trying to get the industry behind, and combine that kind of outcome delivery with some way of getting either the government or vendors to support low-income students who want to go through verified programs and increase their outcomes, because ultimately, whatever we think about universities, if working with them lets us change the lives of tens or hundreds of thousands of folks who otherwise wouldn't have gotten any kind of education and would have been had next to no social mobility, that's something that's going to make us all feel happy to come to work in the morning.
One thing that makes us weary of Block is that a lot of this seems like just a second generation of student financing from higher education companies, and we're really worried that it has all the same downsides, all the same risks, right? And the biggest risk is that there's very little accountability. Right? That's the reason that the current higher education system is broken. It's possible to get this student loan, and you're kind of postponing your payment, you're punting on it, so to speak, right? And regardless of the outcome, you still have that debt. Right? That's horrible, right? So I think in general, the fact that we're as an industry separated from student financing, student loans, I mean, students paying themselves rather than federal student loans is a good thing because it holds the program accountable. So that's our opinion at Block.
That's interesting.
Okay, one thing I think that's been...
hop off. I want to make sure that we answer a few more questions. If anyone has to hop off, I know it's been an hour, please feel free to, and we'll give you a nice goodbye. But if not, do you mind if we just answer like 3 more questions from the audience?
Sounds fun.
Okay, cool. Okay, somebody asked, what do you think of Apollo Education acquiring the Iron Yard? And most recently, David, you just... Strayer University acquired in New York Code and Design Academy, I think?
Yeah, that's what I've seen.
Yeah, what do we think about traditional for-profit schools acquiring boot camps?
I
don't think we want to badmouth anybody,
Well, I mean, M&A is...
I think one thing is about EQUIP is that I agree with Dave here that a lot of us were at the meetings with the government, the DOE, and I appreciate their effort to try to get federal government funding into this. But at the same time, I'm always like, beware the government bring gifts, because the government, has. I mean, you can see that these people are almost working inside their own bureaucracy trying to make this work. And I think that as private companies, most of us are private companies. I think that I admire a lot of the things that these larger companies did, like Apollo, Corinthian, but they got in bed with the government, back in the mid-90s, and we kind of saw where that went, right? Struggling significantly. That pressure, for all companies to scale. But something we've been very careful about at Fullstack is we want to scale the right way, right? If you turn up the levers too far, education is not, teaching someone is not like getting an AWS server, right? It's very human-oriented. It's very dependent on the person. And so the caution I give to everyone is that be careful about how quickly you grow, because there's a magic here that I think can be killed very easily by following the same footsteps that Apollo, Corinthian, all those schools went down.
I think our opinion at Block about Apollo and any other online for-profit university is this. Actually, it's regardless of what program you're talking to, is you got to look at the student outcomes. Look at what's coming in the door and what's going out the door, and that will tell you everything you need to know.
All right. Okay, we have a question from Elaine. So we were talking about actually ageism towards 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, but I actually get this question way more often, which is, what if I am 50, 60 years old and have had a career for the last 40 years and want to get into coding or web development? Is there room for me, or should that person do a CS degree? Does it make more sense?
We've seen the exact same pattern of ageism at both ends of the spectrum, which is, again, you'll see some companies who are immediately displaying it. And interestingly, in some cases, if you gently point it out to them, they'll recoil and do some kind of a reversion process and just try and make sure that they give someone a fair shot. But there again, you still have many who will take advantage of the kinds of experience that folks have from spending. We've had folks come through Hack Reactor with a CS degree, one or more, and a bunch of years of experience, and they were worried about just being accepted as cool kids in web development because they have C or Java experience. And you see it coming from the most surprising of places, more from companies that have a lot of elder employees than from the younger startups. I've seen at least a couple of younger companies just seek out that kind of war story wisdom that they're not otherwise going to get without getting in bed with venture capitalists, which they'll try and put off for as long as they can. But again, that's a very Bay Area experience. I haven't checked in with what it's been like in Chicago at Mobile Makers or the folks in LA or Austin. Should let someone speak for the rest of the country.
I mean, we've seen students come in as young as 18, which is our legal limit, and as high as, I want to say, mid to high 50s. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it for anyone. There is clearly ageism in the tech industry. If you walk into the offices of Facebook, I mean, everyone there looks like they're under 40, right? And so there's clearly ageism. But it depends a lot on what you come from. Like, I think Ruan mentioned, we've had people who are CTOs and I want to get back into it. And if that's your background, then you have team management experience, you know the tech stuff, then it's a clear win for you. I think it's almost like you just get up to speed on what's happening right now. Now, we've had people who have backgrounds in marketing and backgrounds in design. I mean, those are great, I would say, transitioners. You can do that at any point in your career. Now, if you're coming from no technical background, if like sending email on an iPad is about your level of technical expertise, it's going to be more challenging. I'm not gonna lie to anyone and say that it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Final question from the audience. I think this is actually really interesting. So Dean wants to know, as demand has grown to be a career transitioner and the demand for web developers has grown, how has your admissions criteria and admissions rates changed? Have they gone up? Are you accepting more people?
I bet everyone else has the same experience, is that we've just gotten more strict with our admissions. We admit, I think we're at 8%, and now we're at 5% or something like that. We've kind of modified our entire admissions process around, we now have our online offerings. We now are able to actually provide this track of curriculum that we want them to go through on their own for free, and then if they want to apply at a certain point, they can then apply once they finished a certain lab. And so we've made it a bit harder to get in technically, but in the end, the hardest thing to get in, I think, is that your passion is where we need it. We've done a bunch of stats to kind of match outcomes at the end with kind of what we thought people were at the beginning, because we want to be as good as possible at admissions. I really think that admissions is one of the most important things we can provide. And the thing that the highest correlated thing by far was our passion number. Was if you had the grit, you had the passion, yeah, you would be successful no matter what happened. And so we've been really lucky in that as this market has grown, we've been able to be even more selective on passion so that everyone in here is super hardworking, super passionate, and just psyched to be here and program.
All right, so Flatiron's acceptance rate has actually gone down since they've gotten more popular.
Yeah, I think we got down not much. It's been like
stayed really similar.
So we've seen an up and down. It's really hard to keep track of. It's embarrassing that I was this bad at math, but I'd noticed our admissions rate going up and down. I'd wonder what's going on, and you realize it's because our class sizes were changing. And the more students you admit, of course, the higher your admissions rate, and then you get more applications, and it goes down again. Speaking for the bar, I think it's been at Hack Reactor and the other schools in the system pretty consistent since our inception. The only real change, I think, has been qualitative, which is at some point someone posted all the answers on the internet to our challenge. So we had to change it into a randomized challenge of like 200 and something questions about the same difficulty. But the process in the bar just really means we have a lot of folks who have to do the interview multiple times before getting in. So it's gone from most people getting in with one interview or not getting in at all to it becoming much more common for you to interview 2-3 times, 1 or 2 or 3 months apart. And like Flatiron and some other schools have done, we've responded to the fact that we eventually end up letting a lot of people in, i.e. our bar is kind of inefficient, by productizing what used to be the 8 weeks of pre-course that we had. This is the material that we use to actually teach JavaScript before the students actually show up. And we thought it was just for students when we had a Fortune 100 client who said, hey, can we borrow this to teach our legacy engineers JavaScript? And we said, oh, it's useful like that? Sure, I guess we'll put a price on it. And so now we have a lot of students who do that and who would otherwise not have met our screening bar, but have done something much, much, much more difficult and come in that way. Because I don't think we've caught up with the increased volume and the increased popularity. We failed in the other direction and not being able to tell who is able to perform. Like everyone we pick is capable, but we're missing out and rejecting a lot of people who are capable as well. And that's what happens when you take the safe side of the trade-off, like it sounds like Flatiron has done as well, and you focus on 0 false positives at the cost of a lot of false negatives.
Yeah, I think one of the critiques that many people have for years now of Ivy League schools, for instance, is that they're not necessarily that great at educating, but they're very good at filtering out who they let in. Right? So at Block, we believe anybody can succeed if you commit to the time, put in the effort, do the work. We believe you can have a successful outcome. So that's what we've seen.
Yeah, we just put up a pretty interesting study that I'd recommend you guys to try as well. It's going to be damn hard, but it's really worth doing. We're going to evaluate the outcomes of the folks who get into our program and who we enroll against those who get into our program and who go somewhere else. And just keep in touch with them because, again, are we Ivy Leagues? Are we educating or are we just picking winners? We'd all like to think we're educating, but I'm deadly curious to quantify that and find out.
One of my favorite
that will be amazing if you can do that.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about the interview process is while we've we've asked more and more of our students, as we've grown, we've been able to provide more and more support. And that as you're going through the interview process, we're here to answer questions. The content is just way better. Everything that you need to know to be able to pass any of our exams, like one little coding challenge, we provide you all of the skills and all of the educational needs to get there. So we always kind of want it to be challenging, but if you're a passionate person that just comes in from very little, you should still be able to succeed as the passionate person who came in with a ton.
Yeah, so I'm sort of hearing that acceptance rates have fluctuated, but what's really changed is the admissions teams and the support staff and everything around that has grown for a lot of schools over the last couple of years.
I mean, if you're in college and you don't get in, you don't apply for another year and you just end up not going, right? We have a lot more agility in how we approach that challenge.
Cool.
I want to chime in on yeah, I like to stir the pot, so I'm gonna give you some like potential admissions, like controversies or stuff. Probably get myself in trouble. Back in the day of Hungry Academy, which was one of the like early programs here, we had 750 applicants for 24 spots, and that was horrible because you have to read 750 applicants and then try and figure out which are the top 24. And you know, on our site now we have some admissions percentage. I don't know what it is, and I really don't care. You know, when we were first like copywriting, we probably picked a number and put it on there, and I could make a calculation that arrives at that number. I could also make a calculation that arrives at a number like 3 times higher than that. And I've actually been thinking a lot about reversing that and saying like instead of stating it's 8% or 6% or whatever, let's say it's 30%. And because number one, it doesn't matter what it is. Number two, there are a lot of folks out there. If we want to really attract a more like diverse group of applicants, then a bad way to do that is to say like, hey, we only select, yeah, as we're saying here, kind of like the winners, right? We only select the best of the best. Well, maybe I graduated high school below grade level. Maybe I didn't have like all these educational wins. So you're telling me like, oh, the 1 out of 20 who wins everything else, they're going to win this too. Why am I even going to bother? And so, you know, if I look at our students coming in and I feel like happy about them, I don't care what the admissions percentage is, as long as my staff isn't wasting a lot of time interviewing people who aren't going to be a right fit. And so that's been like our efficiency search over time, is making kind of the application and moving some of the complexity into the application, so that if you have the commitment to actually finish the application, then that's a pretty good indicator. And if you get to an interview, I think it's something like if you get to an interview, you have like a 1 in 3 shot at getting into Turing.
Cool.
You know, one thing I will add is, and I'm sure this is reflected by everyone on the panel here today, is how lucky I feel to be in this industry and work with these people who are our students, because the level of passion that they bring to the table is amazing. And I think that that's one thing that you can't fix in someone. Is you can fix how they think about recursion or how they understand data structures, but you can't fix if they're passionate about this topic or not. And one thing I'm really excited about, what we're all doing. For me, I was a geek, right? At the time, like my mom would like go out and do something. I'm like, but I have this amazing box in front of me, and you know, that was my one thing. And now what I'm really excited about is people who are passionate. That's something that we definitely have to bring to the table, and they're good at several things, right? They were, you know, we're not only looking for academic winners, but we are looking for people who have shown passion in other fields, and they bring that to the CS field. And I'm just amazed. I'm, you know, eagerly amazed at what they'll do in the next 10 years that maybe I just would never have seen because I always was in the computer science field. So you can't fix passion. I think that's what everyone is looking for in the admissions process.
I think that is an amazing place to end this question, but my last thing, Jeff, I know you want to talk. My last question for y'all, will y'all just go through and tell us one thing that you are excited about either at your coding bootcamp or in the industry in general right now or coming up? Like, give us something fun to end on.
Really want to ask that one, but I actually have to run to go.
That's fine, Joe. Tell it. Okay.
I'm excited about everything. I don't know. I think the amount of like the equip stuff. I mean, yeah, there's so much that's cool. I think that this group of people is super fun to talk to. I'm excited that there is an opportunity for all these students to do something different and something amazing.
All right, go run Flatiron.
So yeah, I have to go. I'm sorry. I'll talk to you guys later. It's good to talk to you. Bye.
See you, Joe.
What are we excited about? Just picking one thing, huh?
Well, I can go next.
Go for it.
We recently launched Grace Hopper Academy, so going back to bringing women in technology.
Go Shaun.
Yeah, go. So Grace Hopper Academy is exciting for 2 reasons. 1, all women's school, and 2, it's tuition after you get a job, which I think is, you know, talk about financing, putting our finances where our money where our mouth is, I guess. And you know, I think that what this all represents is just really cool about what we're doing here is that it's really hard for CS programs to change because they have 200, 300 years of culture behind them. But we can define a culture, just a different culture that is more inclusive, more supportive, and I think that's what's really exciting about, starting over.
Amazing, David. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'll chime in. One of the things I'm most excited about on the concrete side is we're doubling up our program this year. So a year from now we'll be at 200 students in the building every day, and it's a lot. It's a lot of people. But really, the part that I'm most excited about is what I see as the trees bearing fruit, and all this work that all these schools have been doing to train people to create more inclusive environments, to educate employers and all that. We've got the pilots, we've got the seeds in the ground, right? And now those folks are starting to lead engineering teams, are starting to run companies, and are really moving up the chain, moving up the ladder at an almost scary pace. And so that is going to open up all kinds of new doors and new possibilities, not to mention that so many of our folks who are career switching, they bring with them all these things that they care about and that they're knowledgeable about from their first industry, from their second industry, whatever it was. And so now seeing them getting out into the workforce, and instead of building the next Twitter for dogs or whatever, building things that are important and meaningful to them and the people that they care about. So I feel like we're 1 to 2 years away from really starting to see those fireworks just detonating all over the place, and that's what I really look forward to.
Cool. Thank you for being here, Jeff.
I'm going to go next. It looks like 2016 is going to be the year that outcomes as a thing that is at the center of the industry really takes off on. So just in the last week, wow, just today, what are the 2 amazing pieces of news? Shaun mentioned that his school's got audited outcomes already right behind Flatiron. Liz, you mentioned you guys have a widget coming up. I am psyched about that. We have a ton of announcements coming up about outcomes. The EQUIP program's got this QAE initiative going on also around student outcomes. And in California legislation, there's going to be some movement around whether the state can measure outcomes for these programs in the same way that they do for community colleges, so that it's not about what we say, it's about what the state can tell you about how folks are doing through tax data. And it's not even the end of the first quarter. That's a really great sign for us, and we're going to be doing everything we can. I trust many of the folks on this call are as well, to just shine a spotlight on that side of the industry and how we can both make the right claims and verify those claims in the short term and the long term as well. The 4-year mark is kind of sentimental from an outcome standpoint, because that's when our first graduates would have, typically have completed their CS degree. So we'll be able to say a lot about the industry and its quality and where it fits in the broader education marketplace with all the hard work that all you guys are doing on that front. So
I love that. Thank you for bringing up outcomes, and thank you for being here, Ron.
Ron, I would add a little touch of color to the legislation and the accreditation piece. I don't know that I feel that tax data for an upstart education company is the best sense of comfort to give to individuals. And I know a lot of California, New York, a lot of the markets that Startup Institute is in, there's been that question show us your books and that you have an endowment that's this great in size. I'm I'm really sure you're thinking about universities.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay. What did you mean by tax data?
I meant something totally different. So check this out. So California community colleges, the way they measure outcomes, they have a thing called a salary surfer, where they can, just like they do for federal student loans.
Student tax data.
Yeah, you measure the student outcomes, right?
There you go. Thank you so much.
So
I was going to be whose side are you on?
No. God, no. I mean, so a lot of the schools, quite seriously, when we say everyone should measure their student outcomes and collect job offer letters and whatnot, I mean, Shaun, you just went through this.
Yes.
It's really hard. It's super expensive, and a lot of small schools can't afford to do it, right? And it's super challenging, and I mean, not everyone's going to just be able to even find and hire the right people to do it. It took me 2 years to find enough people to do this right. And most schools don't have that long. So the beautiful thing about using government data, inspired by the college scorecard that they did for universities, is it lets us get ahead of using that kind of information to just see what's actually happening. And students can opt in, and that's part of consumer protection. You can see, without us having to lift a finger, how our students are doing after 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 years. We're trying to unlock some of that, just for our alumni, with the help of a decent-sized university that is doing a study on this, and hopefully with the governments getting involved as well. That'll just make this a whole lot easier for us. And Shaun, I agree. Let's keep intrusion into what we do, regulatorily speaking, to a minimum, if the state can verify that we're doing right by our students. And if they think we're not, if it looks like our students aren't getting jobs, they can come in and do whatever they want. That's somebody else's problem. None of us have to worry about that, right?
Okay, so Shaun and Dave, tell us what you're excited about.
Sure. So I'm excited for. All right, I'm gonna try to do my best, Jeff, and do something controversial. I'm excited for the technology vertical to go away, and what I mean by that is, as you think about advertising, finance, all of that, technologies as an industry, I'm excited for people to stop thinking about it that way, and I'm excited to the more back-end web developers that we continue to create and allow them to do their best work in the world, for us to take a statistician and give them those same coding skills so they can become a data scientist, right? To give a designer the opportunity to be a full stack developer because they've got the creative, the understanding of how users experience a product as well as the ability to build it. So I do think that that's going to continue to just be more of this cross-functional ether across a lot of different verticals, and no one will be like, I work in tech. So that's what I'm excited for.
Cool.
I'm going to try to keep it short. I'm actually just excited about the industry in general. I think it sounds like many of us were around in 2012 as well. It's been a crazy 4 years. So it's been 4 years, yeah. And watching the different approaches that different companies have is fascinating to me. I think it's healthy. I think our industry is the healthiest of any industry right now. I guess economically speaking. But the most important thing to me is that the rising tide lifts all boats. I think there's plenty of room for all of, if you look at higher education today, there's a ton of different schools. There's a reason for that. There's plenty of, I guess, opportunity, and there's plenty of opportunity to change what, in my opinion, is the most important problem in our society today, and that's education. And we have each chosen to plant our flag firmly in the technology field, and I think that's great. I guess I'm just excited to see that continue.
That is an excellent place to land. So, y'all, thank you so much for joining us. Ron, David, Shaun, Dave, and Jeff, and Joe, who had to leave, but was wonderful. Y'all have all been amazing in introducing us to the differences between a CS degree and a coding bootcamp, but I feel like we've gone so much deeper than that in this conversation. And that's been wonderful, so I can't thank you enough. And then to everyone who's watching this, I will post links to the video recording of this webinar on Course Report, and I'll also include contact information for all of our wonderful panelists here. And if you registered for the webinar in advance, then you'll get a follow-up email tomorrow with all of that information. And finally, just visit Course Report, reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, tell us what you want to see in our next webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
All right, thank you.